There are several advantages to setting up static routing. First, static routing has the lowest administrative distance, only 1, and the lower the better. Compare that to the administrative distance of dynamic routing protocols, such as RIP 120, OSPF 110, IGRP 100, or even EIGRP, which is 90. No broadcast, convergence, calculations, hop counts, bandwidth, or composite metrics are required by the router to determine where to send a packet when it follows a static route. It just follows the static entry in the routing table. This saves bandwidth since no broadcast or router advertisements have to be made as with routing protocols. It also does not consume memory or CPU cycles on the router, optimizing its efficiency. The disadvantage to static routing is its complexity. It requires the administrator to set up everything manually, and this can be a daunting task on larger networks. This is why static routing is usually only performed on smaller networks with less than 10 subnets. Step 1. Let's set up the physical connections for a small business local area network with 5 separate Class C networks. In our first network setup, we're going to configure static routing. And so in this simulator setup, we have 6 hosts and 3 routers. And we're going to be routing between approximately 5 different networks. And we could do subnets and subnet on a Class B, but this first one we're going to keep it simple. We're going to do 5 separate Class C networks. So if you take a look at the setup, starting over here on this host, we have 199.207.10.10. And then this will connect to the router, and the router will be the gateway at 10.1. That's on the fast Ethernet connection 00.0.0 here. Now this router is going to have a serial connection to the middle router, and that'll be 192.168.20. And then this PC will have a connection to the fast Ethernet on the middle router, and that'll be 199.207.30. And then there'll be another serial connection from the middle router to the third router over here, and that'll be 199.207.40. And then finally here on the fast Ethernet, if I kind of scroll over here, the fast Ethernet connection to the switch, this layer 3 switch over here, in this case it's a 2950, will connect to these for a host, and that will be network 199.207.50. Okay, so to get between these networks, we're going to have to set up connectivity between the routers. And to do that, we're going to use the serial connections since the fast Ethernet connections are being utilized already. And to do that, remember, we have to configure either DTE or DCE, and by default, routers are DTE. And the easiest thing to do might be to make the middle router the DCE provider for both. And then that way these guys can remain the default. And when we configure clock rates and bandwidth, we can simply do it on the middle router. We can do everything on that one single middle router. So in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead in the router simulator software, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to select, in this case, serial 0. And I'm going to choose DCE, so it'll provide the clock rate. And I'm going to go here to the first router, and I'm going to connect it to serial port 00. Okay, so there that is. And then now I'm going to go ahead and take the next port, serial 01, and again I'm going to make it the DCE provider, so it'll set the clock rate, and I'm going to connect that to serial port 000 on the third router. Okay, and now what remains is for us to go in and configure. We've configured our hosts, and whether that was Linux or whether that was Windows, that would be a whole different story. And the tools we'd use, ipconfig, ifconfig, net commands, whether we graphically, visually do it in the GUI, whatever. But what we want to focus on are not that, but the router commands, the actual Cisco IS router commands to set up our routers. So that's what we're going to do. Step 2. Let's configure the first perimeter router. First, we'll set the passwords. Now that we have our network set up, let's go ahead and configure our routers. So that sort of takes care of layer 1, the physical layer. Let's look at configuring layers 2 and 3, and eventually setting up routing. So I'm going to log in, and now I'm in user mode, and I want to go to privilege mode. No passwords or anything set yet. And I want to go to global configuration mode. And in global configuration mode, the very first thing I want to do is set up some passwords, maybe try to implement some security on my router. So if I go to line configuration mode, let's do telnet first, VTY0 and 1180. And that puts me in line configuration mode, and we'll set a password. Not a very strong or complex password, but for the purpose of this lab, let's keep it short and simple. Okay, so just a password kiwi. And I can exit and go back into the line configuration mode, or I can select another line right from here, right from this prompt. No need to add an extra step. So again, I'm going to do line. In this case, we'll do auxiliary, aux0, password. Again, we'll use the same password, and we'll specify login. And if I didn't want, by the way, I could just type in no login. If I didn't want a password for login, I could turn that off. But in this case, we'll leave it on. And let's do console 0. And same thing, we'll do kiwi. And we'll specify login. Okay. And I'm going to hit Control Z to go back to privilege mode. And I'm going to exit. And let's see how this works. We haven't configured a global password yet, but we do have a login password, in this case for our console, so, and telnet as well. So if I were to, I have to enter my password now, kiwi, to get in. But notice if I want to go from user mode to privilege mode, there's no password required. I didn't have to enter anything. So if I wanted to, again, if I wanted to add a global password, I could enable secret, and I would go to, once again, the global configuration mode, config T, and I would type enable secret. Remember, you could do password, but secret overrides it anyway, so why not just set secret? And again, our short and insecure and non-cryptic password there, but still for this lab. So once that's set, I'm going to exit out of global configuration mode, and I'm going to look at my running configuration just to show you what that looks like. And notice, it's the secret is encrypted by default, and when I get down here, you can see all of my other passwords for auxiliary and console and telnet or VTY. And just to show you the behavior of that, watch what happens. If I hit enter, all right, so it's going to go ahead and ask me for my, VTY or console password. And then now, if I try to enable, it's also going to query me for a global password before I can get into privilege mode and then therefore into global configuration mode. Okay, so we've set passwords, we've implemented security. The next thing we might want to do is, set the host name. We'll give it a sort of a user-friendly host name. We'll call it Galactica, of course. Now, let's set the host name. Now that we've set up our security and our passwords, we kind of pull this out here and kind of make things a little bit larger. Let's go ahead and go back to global configuration mode and configure some more things on our first router. One of the first things that might be convenient is a user-friendly host name. So it's not just an IP address or something generic called router. So of course we'll call it Galactica. Now let's set up the router's interfaces. The next thing we need to do is configure our interfaces. Remember, we're connecting to fast Ethernet and also the serial connection. So to configure those interfaces, I need to use, if you type out the full word interface, or I can use the shorthand, the abbreviation INT, and I could type out fast Ethernet 0, or I could just simply do F0/0. And if I do that, okay, I've selected that interface, and remember the IP command, specifically we want address. And remember this network right here is 10. If I pull this down, this case I have 192.168.10.10, and it's going to connect to the gateway 192.168.10.1. So that's the first thing I want to configure there. So IP address 192.168.10.1, and it's going to be my gateway, and I need a subnet mask 255.255.255.0. And then there's my IP address. The next thing I'm going to want to do is bring the interface up. Remember, it's not active yet, not activated, so to activate it, bring it up, I'm going to type in no shut or no shutdown. I prefer the shorter method. And then also I'll give it a description, and in this case I'll simply say connection to network, all caps, and 192.168.10.0. We use the network address, so it has a description now. So there's three things on the fast Ethernet connection. And then I can exit out and select the next interface, or I could just select it right from here. I could select interface S, and then on this 2800 series router it would be 0, 0, 0 with the /. Now I'll select my serial interface to configure now. And remember, since this is the DCE connection, not the, since this is a DTE connection, not the DCE end, I don't have to set the clock rate. It'll be set on the middle router. So really I just have to configure the IP address, and again that's the same command. And this particular one is going to be the next network up, so it's going to be 20 since the last one was 10. So IP address 199.207.20, and then I'm going to make this the gateway, and then give it a subnet mask, just a standard class C. And then I also need to bring it up because it's not activated yet. So I need to activate the interface. I'll just type no shutdown or no shut. And then I might also give it a description. And I might say connection to network 199.207.20.0. Just a string there that it'll save that data. Now let's configure a banner message. Last, let's go ahead and configure a banner message on this router. So again, I go to global configuration mode, and I'm going to use the command banner, message of the day, or MOTD, and I need to specify a delimiter character, and again, my personal preference is the pipe symbol, but just a character you're not going to use in the banner message, of course. And welcome to the Galactica. We'll simply say that, and I'll end it with a pipe symbol. And so that's my banner message. And if I were to log out and log into our router, now notice when I telnet into it, it says welcome to the Galactica. And I type in my password Kiwi. There's my global secret password, Kiwi, and I'm in, and there's my host name. Okay, so I kind of went through the first router step by step. The next two routers, we'll try to pick up the pace a little bit, and we'll go through those all together. Step 3. Let's configure the second middle router. Now that we've configured the first end router, and this is network 10 and this is network 20, we need to configure the middle router. And remember, whereas both end routers are the default normal DTE connection, in this case the middle router is going to be DCE on both serial connections. So we have to set the clock rate. So that'll be one extra setting or additional setting we need to configure when we set up the interfaces. So for the middle router, let's go ahead and telnet into it, virtually, so to speak. And in user mode, I'm going to go to privilege mode with enable, and in privilege mode, I'm going to go to global configuration mode. And let's think of some of the things that we want to do. So let's set the passwords. And this time we'll set the global password first. And I'll use the same password. So enable secret Kiwi. And now I'm going to go to line configuration mode, and I'll select telnet 0 and 1180, and again Kiwi, and I'll specify login, and I'm going to specify auxiliary aux0 and password and login, and I'm going to specify console 0, and also Kiwi for the password. Okay, so our passwords are all set. Let me hop out of line configuration mode, and at the global configuration terminal prompt, I'm just going to set the host name. And let's see, let's call this one Pegasus. Of course, why not? Okay, and so those things that have been set. Now we need to actually go in and configure the interfaces here on the middle router. So on our middle router, let's go ahead and the first thing we'll do, let me pull this down for a minute. First thing we'll do is, why don't we configure the serial interface connecting the end router here to the middle router. And it's going to have to be on the same network. This is 21, so we'll need to make this one 192.168.22, see, so they can communicate, so they'll be compatible. And then later, when we configure routing, both static and dynamic, those networks, those near networks, will be recognized as adjacencies on multiple interfaces. Let's set up the first DCE serial interface. So to configure that serial interface, remember that's connected to serial interface 0. Let me make sure one time. This should be connected to, yeah, in this case, serial interface 0, 0 there. So 0, 0, 0 on this 2800 series router. Okay, so we're telnetted in here, and let's go ahead and configure that interface then. So I'm going to go ahead, and this time I'm going to use the interface command. I could use whole interface, but I'm going to select S000 to select the serial interface. And the things I want to configure are the IP address and 192.168.13. 13 stuck on that. Excuse me, 22 Class C subnet mask. And I'm just going to put, for the description, connection to network 192.168.207.20. And again, I need to bring up the interface. And before I bring up the interface, let me go ahead and set the clock rate. Again, since this is the DCE side of things, that's one of the things that we need to do. So it depends on the adapter and the cable that you connect it with, whether it's DTE or DCE, but remember this case we made the middle router DCE, so clock rate, and typically 6400. So I set the clock rate, and then I need to bring it up. I need to activate it, so no shutdown or no shut, in this case, on that serial interface. Okay, so that interface has been set up now, and that's connected to our network. And we have an IP address and everything set up there. Now let's set up the second DCE serial interface. Okay, with the first interface configured, let's look at the second serial interface and how we're going to do our networking. So again, let me drag this over here a little bit so you can see hopefully better. But here we've got 192.168.207.10. So there's our 192.168.10 network right here in this segment. Here we've got 192.168.20, where this serial connection 21 connects to this serial connection 22. This is going to be network 30 off of fast Ethernet, and this is going to be 40 going over here, these two serial connections. So let's go ahead and do the other serial connection. We'll set up network 40, then we'll come back and do fast Ethernet or 30. And to do that, let's drag our console back up here. We're still logged into the router. And we've just configured serial interface 00. And again, if you want to see that, let me show you. So 00, this is what we configured. This is network 20. This is the serial port 001 that goes to the third router, the router on the end here, to its S000. So that's the one that we want to configure. So we'll bring our hyperterminal up here. And let's go ahead and select the interface. And I just want to go int S, and this time 001. That's the one I'm going to select. And I'm going to set the IP address. Oops. And again, 192.168.207. And this time it's going to be 40 and 1 will set, and a Class C subnet. And I'm going to go ahead and set a description. Connection to network 192.168.207.40. Be the description there. And I'm going to go ahead and set the clock rate. And again, remember the middle router is the DCE connection device for both of the end routers. Each end router is DTE, the middle router is DCE on both serial ports. So we can set the clock rate 6400, and I need to bring the router interface up, so I'm going to do no shutdown or no shut. When I do that, it comes up, and now that gives us our network 41. So on the other end we want to connect to 42 on the other serial port there. Finally, we'll configure the fast Ethernet interface. But there's one more. We need to do network 30, and that's connected to fast Ethernet port 00. So once again, I'm going to do IP. Well, actually, let me select the interface first. Interface F000 would be the short way to do it. I'm going to use the IP address command, 192.168.207.30, and I'm going to make this the gateway, so that'll be 192.168.207.31. and a Class C subnet. And I'm going to go ahead and set the description on it. Connection to network 192.168.207.30. And now I'm going to use the command no shut or no shutdown. And I'll bring that interface up as well. Okay, and we have all three of our interfaces configured as we need them to be. clock rate set on the serial connections, and the fast Ethernet connection is all set. All three have IP addresses. So I'm going to go ahead and do Control Z here to drop down to privilege mode. Banner time. Config T to go back up to global configuration mode. I'm just going to create a banner. Banner, message of the day, MOTD. And again, my delimiter character, I'll use the pipe symbol. And for my banner message, I'm just going to say, welcome to the Pegasus, and end it with my delimiter character. And there's my banner message. And Control Z to go back down to privilege mode and exit. And just to show you the configuration, if I log into the router now, I hit return. And let me enter my password, Kiwi. Let me go to privilege mode, enable, enter my password, Kiwi. And notice my banner message there, welcome to the Pegasus. Let's take a peek at our configuration. And I'm just going to show the running configuration. And notice that in this case, here's my encrypted password. And notice that in this case, here's my fast Ethernet connection, so 31.255.255.255.0. And notice that here are all my connections here, 31, there's 22, and there's 41. So 3 networks in the middle router. Notice that on the DCE connection, I have a clock rate set of 6400 on both serial connections. And here are all my passwords and things. And last but not least, before I power this router down, I want to make sure I save everything. And remember, the command for that is copy, run, start. That's to copy the running configuration to the startup configuration, to NVRAM or non-volatile RAM. And now that we've done that, everything is saved, and we're ready to move on. So I'm going to close the terminal, and now once again try to drag these out so you can see all of the different interfaces. Okay. So notice my networks now, network 10, in this case 1010, gateway 10.1. Here's network 20. There's 21 the gateway, and here's 22, the other serial connection there. Here's 31, and this is 3010, so here's network 30. And here's network 40 going to the end router, the other end router on the other side. And now we just need to go and configure that router as well. Step 4. Let's configure the third perimeter router. On configuring the last router, let's bear in mind that this is network 40. So 10 up here, 20, 30, this is 40. So I have to have a compatible and matching network address. In this case, 192.168.0.40, they need to have the same. And they need to have different host IDs so we don't get an IP conflict. So we're going to configure this serial interface here on the third router, serial 000 on a 2800 series router, or 00 on a 26 or 2500 series, as 192.168.0.42. And then also we have another connection here. We'll scroll over. This is fast Ethernet 00, and it connects here to the 50 network, 192.168.0.50. So again, we'll have to configure that interface as well. So why don't we go ahead and log into our router. We'll telnet via the virtual terminal, or VTY. And I'm going to go ahead and hit return, and I'm going to go ahead and enable to go to privilege mode, and then I'm going to config T to go to global configuration mode. And inside global configuration mode, why don't we give it a user-friendly name as well. And this time we'll pick the name of Commander Adama's first Battlestar, or the one he was first in command of, and I believe it was called the Valkyrie. V-A-L-K-Y-R-I-E. I think that's the same way you spell the motorcycle, but I'm not sure. Anyway, and then let's go ahead and configure a global password. So we'll enable secret, and again we'll set it to be Kiwi, just like our other passwords. And let's go ahead and do our typical line connections. So why don't we do the first one, telnet. We'll do line VTY and 0. And let me see. If this were 25 or 2600, it would be a 4. It's 1180 here. I'll select the last line. And by the way, if you're not sure, let me just back up and show you what you would type to find out. If you weren't sure, I could do line VTY 0, and then if I hit the question mark, notice it'll give me the last line number, 1180. So it depends on the series model router that you run. It also depends on the different options and things installed on that router. But in this case, I know I would need to type in 1180. Okay, and now that I have selected that interface, I'm going to go ahead and configure a password. And remember, I can't log in until I actually do configure a password. It won't let me. So let's see, what are we using? Kiwi. I'm going to go ahead and do Kiwi. And then once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and log in. And now I'm going to select auxiliary, aux0. And same thing, password, Kiwi, and log in. And now I'm going to select line and console 0 and password Kiwi. And again, I will specify login. And now we have a global password, and we have passwords on the console, auxiliary, and VTY terminals. So we're ready to go and configure our interfaces. And I don't know, I don't know if you remember a while back, but remember we were looking at how you could turn on and off encryption. And if I show the running configuration here, notice that yes, my secret password is encrypted, but if I come down here, none of these passwords have been hashed or encrypted. And do you remember the command for that? Pop quiz. Let me go to global configuration mode, and in global configuration mode, it was service password encryption, and that would turn that on. And then you don't have to leave it on, but you do have to display the passwords before they are actually encrypted. If I turn it off before I display or list the passwords, at least on some models of router, then it doesn't actually encrypt the passwords or hash them. So I want to do that first. So I'm going to drop down to privilege mode here, and if I show run, get down here and notice now my passwords are encrypted. It's still Kiwi, but it's hashed and encrypted. And again, I'll go back to global configuration mode, and now I don't really need that service anymore. I can turn it off, they'll still stay encrypted, just won't encrypt new passwords, but no point in leaving it running so that it consumes resources. So I would just type no service and password encryption. Just figure we throw that in there. Okay, so back to configuring the interfaces, we need to do that. So the first one we'll select, let's do interface S000, the serial interface. Remember, this is our network 40 here. And the middle router is 192.168.41. So why don't we make this one IP address 199.207.42, Class C subnet. And I'm going to do a description, and we'll call this connection to network 199.207.40. And I need to do a no shutdown command, and I don't have to set the clock rate. Yay! Because this is a DTE router like the first one, unlike the middle one, which is DCE on both ends. So all I have to do is no shutdown or no shut to bring the interface up. Okay, once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and select another interface. In this case, my fast Ethernet, F0/0 for my fast Ethernet interface, and IP address 199.207. In this case, 50 and 1, it'll be the gateway. And Class C subnet 255.255.255.0. And my description is going to be connection to network 199.207, 50, and we'll just put 0 for the network address. And again, I need to bring up the interface. So no shutdown or no shut, the shorter version of that command. Okay, and now this router is completely configured, completely configured, except that maybe we want to exit out and give it a banner message as well. So in global configuration mode, banner, MOTD, message of the day, delimiter character, a pipe symbol, and for the message I'm going to say, like the other two, welcome to the VALKYRIE, I think it is. Gosh, I need to Google that. Yeah, I think that's how you spell the motorcycle, and also Commander Adama's first battle star. Yeah, I know, that's pretty nerdy. Okay, so we have all of this information set. I'm going to do Control Z and hop back down to privilege mode. I'm going to show the running configuration. And notice that here's all my interfaces configured the way that we want. The serial connection 42, no clock rate set because it's DTE rather than DCE. And the fast Ethernet is 50, so everything is okay there like we want. And then our passwords are all set down here and they are encrypted like we want. And there's our banner message and our host name and everything. And then the last thing we might want to do, and I forgot to do this on the first router, which it's still there, but I don't want to power it off or I'll lose all those settings. But remember, when you're all done, you want to copy the running configuration to the startup configuration. Save it to non-volatile RAM, and that way if you lose power or you have to reboot the router, then when it boots, that startup configuration will load. You won't have lost anything. At this point, where I have to lose power, I will. So in order to remedy that, I'm going to use the copy command, and I'm going to copy the running configuration to the startup configuration. You just don't want to copy the startup configuration to the running configuration because that'll erase everything. Make sure you copy run start and do not copy start run in this example. Okay, and then now I have the same in my startup configuration. So I'm going to exit out, and you can see my network now. So we haven't really set up static routing yet and our routing tables or any kind of dynamic routing, anything like that. At least I can drag these around and try to get it to where you can see all the network interfaces. There we go. And the only other thing I did, I don't think I did that on this one. Let me go to this router here and make sure that I saved it. We're okay because it's powered up, but just in case, let me go to privilege mode. And let's see, inside privilege mode, here in our running configuration, all of our settings are there as we wish. But we did not copy it to the startup configuration. I do not believe. Show start like we did on the other two routers. Yeah, see, if I go here, notice that the settings are not the same. So I'd want to go ahead and copy it. And in this case, I'm going to do copy, run start. And in this case, and now, if I show my startup configuration, it too has all of my settings. And were something horrible to happen, lost power, had to reboot the router, all my settings would be there. Okay, so if you take a gander or a look at our network now, here's what's going on. And now we're getting ready to go in and actually set up our static routing tables now and look at adjacencies. But if we take a peek, this is network 1010, connects to gateway 10.1. So network 10 is between this host and this fast Ethernet connection on the router. Network 20 is between this serial connection 000 and serial connection 000 on this router. And respectively, it's 21 and 22. So there's network 20. Network 30 is between the fast Ethernet connection 00 on this router and this host right here, 3010. 31's the gateway. Okay? And now the middle routers, remember, it's acting as the DCE connecting device for both of these. This is DTE, DTE, this is DCE on both ends. So this sets the clock rate and provides the path. And try to get that pop-up to disappear there. Okay, so the next network is 40. And that's the serial 001, which is 192.0.0.741 connecting to 192.0.0.742. And our IPs have to be compatible for communication to take place and for routing to take place. And now it gets to this router, and then on the fast Ethernet connection 00, once again on this router, we are connecting to the switch, and then into the switch we have these four hosts right here: Daedalus, Ares, Poseidon, and Zeus, and Artemis and Apollo over here. And then our routers are Galactica, Pegasus, and Valkyrie. So everything is good to go ahead and now begin to set up routing.